we needed in order to achieve the significant progress we've made and to continue. But I think where we find ourselves now is with the evidence that we can utilize to talk to our policymakers, to talk to decision makers about Capitol Hill and capitals in other parts of the country where resource countries, and say, this is what we're able to achieve. This is the potential outcome. We can significantly bend the curve of morbidity and mortality everywhere, and allow them to make very difficult decisions, sometimes not so difficult. I'm reminded of serving on President Thabo Mbeki's advisory council years ago, South African president, who was investigating whether HIV caused AIDS. We spent an inordinate amount of time debating the evidence. The others, the AIDS denialists, did their best to try and curb progress in South Africa, and succeeded in some ways. But the very week we met for the first time, South African Ministry of Defense announced they had just purchased 5 nuclear submarines, but they couldn't afford ART for their people. And those are the types of calculations that are made on a daily basis, and we can't allow that decision to be made. We can't allow it.
Conspiracy to suppress the cure. I mean, people will make an inordinately large amount of money off of vaccines and cures. It's capitalism, not conspiracy. So when the science is pushed through, the companies who are making money from drugs now will make monies from the cure and the vaccine, and also treatment that's existing today may be part of that modality. So also the money that we're going to save long term. I mean, I know a lot of politicians sort of think in short-term frames, but the nations where we've seen incidence decline around the world, where the U.S. taxpayer dollars have been invested through programs like PEPFAR and Global Fund, and we have seen, virtually very, very steep declines in incidence. If we can do it in Botswana, we should be able to do it in Baltimore, and we have seen the savings in terms of raw dollars and human life. So there's a clear argument for it, and I think the last thing is there's no question that no matter what we have, there will be inequities still that prevent us from getting everything equally distributed to everybody. But the stigma is still one of the biggest barriers to people getting access to care today around the world. And if you put the cure and the vaccine out there, it will help destigmatize the disease. And I think people will be able to come forward more easily for those solutions. So I think that's an inspiration too.
The Broadway play The Normal Heart, writer activist Ned Weeks screams for hardcore activism, in-your-face activism, act-up activism, but it was considered often too controversial. There was a march today to the White House as part of the conference. Of the thousands marching who were planning to march, 13 people were arrested for tying dollar bills and pill bottles to the White House fence. Yesterday, activists were at the convention center where Mayor Gray was welcoming the conference, and the activists were saying, we need more housing, we need more housing. They were demonstrating. It was a very small group compared to the people who were there listening. Question to the panelists, what is the role and the impact of this type of activism today? Do we need more of it, or is it old school and we don't need it at all? And we'll not call
Well, I saw Normal Heart last night. I have a reputation in some circles as a total asshole, and deservedly so.
You can be in the media.
I'm angry that in Washington, D.C., that not every young person gets good HIV education. Not every young person gets information about how to stop bullying. Not every young person is getting information on being gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, or just gender variant in some way. I'm angry. And I have really struggled recently because the city has been very hard to make change in recently. You might have read a little bit about that in the paper. And I have been told recently that I need to kind of slow my roll because people are getting angry because I'm not saying all the good things that are happening. But I'm angry. And I watched Normal Heart last night, and I am angrier. I am, and I devoted myself to becoming a bigger asshole. That's actually possible, but I am committed to trying. And what was so shocking to me about watching and being at this crossroads moment is, you know, here's Ned screaming about getting attention, about really, on some level, simple fixes. You know, Ray talked about this. I mean, there are so many things that are really simple to fix, and we refuse to fix them. We could have every young person get really high-quality HIV education in the district, and we just don't. So I feel like there are moments where we need to, there are parts of the city, and I'm a diplomatic person by nature, mostly. But no, I really am. I am. And an asshole. I mean, this is what we do.
Are we talking about?
This is what we do when we're advocates. We have to be able to play both sides. And there are moments in DC government, moments of brilliance. We don't really have a strong opposition to doing the things that we think should happen. It's our incompetence and our lack of political will. And I'm here to say that for Washington, D.C., we could do more. And I'm angry, and I'm going to be a bigger asshole to get that done.
What about activism? Jose?
I think we certainly need more of it. I mean, there's only so much that playing nice and begging can get you. At some point, you reach a threshold, you have to demand what it is that we need as a community. Health is a human right. Access to HIV prevention and testing and treatment is a human right we need to fight for. And there are people who make that cold, hard calculation I referenced earlier and allow people to die. That's just the reality of life. It may make some of us uncomfortable. It may make some professionals uncomfortable. But it's the only way we're going to achieve and have achieved much of the progress we have today. Let's not forget, it was industry activism that reformed the way in which drugs are approved in this country and provided access to people living with HIV/AIDS who would otherwise have died. We can't forget that. To those people who call it old school, I think that's just misguided, and we need to reevaluate.
I think that activism, protest is always legitimate, whether it's what we saw in Wisconsin this past year or elsewhere. But I also do want to challenge us a little bit as a community, because especially coming from Black tradition, I think a lot of this is also about Black people right now. I'm very disappointed. I'm very disappointed in our people. That the activism was to make our lives better. And so it disappoints me when we now have HIV testing available and every person does not know their status. It disappoints me when we have medications that, Jeannie put herself out, her son is named after a bill that provides billions of dollars, and we have people who don't go for care. It disappoints me when we have people in our community who, even once they know, and they know that there's help available, are so ashamed of themselves that they won't get care. Well, I'm sorry, I don't understand that. My grandparents, my great-grandparents, and my great-grandparents before them, they had to withstand a whole lot of shit. And people not liking them. And a whole lot of stigma. We wear it every single day. It doesn't go away. And so I don't have a lot of sympathy for people who aren't willing to push back and defend their own life. And that doesn't mean just acting out on the streets. That means registering to vote. It means getting your HIV test. It means managing